Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go back at you with another Monarchy cast, and we've got another matchup on the same map, same players, same spawns even. We're on Radium here for map 2 between ArbuzBudesh, who has changed his ID to a very, very not ironic, very straight up request for balance. He is going to be our dark green Zerg in the top right, and Newt in the bottom left is our Zafir Terran in the bottom left, going for a stockade open yet again. You know how it is sometimes. You just gotta get that bio out. Hope you guys are having a good day today. I'm personally going to be having a good one throughout today because, well, got the Monarchy in the front of mind to cast. We got some updates to push to the game later today. I'm recording this on the 25th of October, in case you are curious. And Arbuz is going to be going for a Larvosk, well, Kagrant Pool Larvosk. That's sort of his opener here. Interesting little rollback to how things used to be before everybody and their mother was going the Zeke route of building Hydrith. Seems like Arbuz not exactly keen on it. Remember, this game was played on the 11th of October, so it's a little bit out of date, but that's just because I was on vacation. Wasn't able to cast all the matches that I wanted to during that time. We've got plenty of other October matches to play, including some names that we haven't seen on the channel yet, so I'm excited to get to those later on. If you want to support the project development, you can head on over to our coffee page. Yesterday was the birthday of Veek7, co-developer, and earlier in the 13th was my birthday. So big ups on that front. We always appreciate tips, but birthday month tips, those are pretty cool too. Those are pretty appreciated. And nowadays, we don't see Zephyr cores coming out too often in the early stages of the game, but they do have that extra HP that they had once upon a time. They dreamt of once upon a time. Now they have it. So that's an interesting little factor for the Zephyr cores to provide some value in. It's funny that it says Vulture 20 HP, but I gave Zeth's 10 HP. So Arbuz should be pretty happy as he's a Protoss turned Zerg main. Might see him try Protoss again later on. Who knows? He kind of goes back and forth every now and then. And he's just going to be scouting for any proxies, seeing what his opponent is up to. Remember, he hasn't actually scouted yet, and you can't really say the same for Newt, who's going to be moving across with the bio. Maybe thinking of his ministry here on location. I love that this Maverick is pinched off because it is going to allow him to sort of realize what's going on here. That actually baits the Zets forward, and they could go in and cancel the natural if they wanted to, but that Huracan attack gets several Zets alight. You can see Newt actually pocketed his Mason and slowed it down just in case he was going to get attacked and heckled. He didn't want to lose the Mason and send another one out, or worst comes to worst, you have to cancel the ministry outright, losing a lot of money in the process. So Arbuz doesn't know it, but he left some money on the table there for his opponent to take. Didn't take all of his lunch money with those Zets. Now he's going to run in, and maybe he can get a little bit of something done. That Mason should be dead. Indeed will be, but I don't think anything else can come of it. The stimmed Mavericks are going to shoo those Zets away, and we're going to need to see another Mason get sent down indeed. Not quite like Clockwork, but whatever is a step below Clockwork, where there's a little bit of a lag time. Laggy Clockwork. I don't know. Workshop that one. Droleth goes down immediately, though, so there's no expansion attempt for Arbuz that's going to get off the ground here until there's a little bit of a delay processed. Most of the quads also going down. There could have been a little bit more focus fire there from Newt, but overall, good use of the bio. You're not going to escape necessarily. I mean, you could if it was just quads, but do you really want to? Do you really want to bother? I think the answer is probably yes, because if you end up doing that, you're in a much better position to heckle and harass later on, but they were pretty wounded. Might not have even been able to stim too many times. Now back at home, a third stockade being added, Huracans, then Cyprians coming out for Newt, spending down some of his Vespine. And he's already got an extra Mason here to do what he needs to do. Repair that ministry up to full HP and get it going again. Rocking and a roll in here. The Zets are going to absolutely sink their claws into the Huracans. The stim is very late here. The Cyprians should be able enough to turn this around, but this is a pretty deadly attack from Arbuz that we wouldn't necessarily associate with pool units. That extra 10 HP helping out quite a bit, so it would seem. And a couple of Masons will be going down. Remember that Arbuz's expansion is a little bit later than Newt's, but he's Zerg. He can max out on workers pretty easily there once he puts down a little bit of extra larva. A lot of Zets being made. He's banked a lot of minerals in the process. That's one of the benefits you get from the Zets being so cheap. Now we're going to have to see if he wants to go ahead and make some more macro hatches, which I would certainly favor. The Zeth scouting at the 3 o'clock is pulled away, and we're going to be seeing more and more stockades sort of slowly come up here. Now, Newt hasn't really been adding on too much. He's been favoring a faster tier 2. I do think that as savants fall out of favor, somebody will people realize that Cyprians were really good, but eventually people are going to want to go for savants, especially into pool-based strategies, which is what Arbuz is leveraging here with the Lyrilisc. You're going to want the Shamans as well, so I think both add-ons become a little bit more powerful, a little bit more beneficial when you're dealing with a thing like that. There's the Calcure Lake for that Apex strain. Also worth probably investigating Calculisks a little bit more. Cannoli does plenty, but haven't seen a replay from him in a little bit. Maybe he's going to be featured soon, because I always like to check in on, Cannoli's like, he does have a funny set of strategies that other Zergs can definitely learn from, because other Zergs at the top level typically have better mechanics than Cannoli. Cannoli gets a lot of value just off of his strategy alone, his zany tactics. Let's just put it this way, like there are really good Terrans out there. Shopdog, Newt is one of them. Aud when he's playing Terran. There's really good Terran players that are at the top of the top when it comes to not just a strategic understanding of the game, but mechanical exploits. I would say Top Ramen doesn't play as often these days due to work concentrations, but definitely a player who would be up there in my estimation as well. And can only takes games off of all of them, so just to put it out into perspective. Maybe Aud is a little bit more stable versus Cannoli's shenanigans, but, the other guys, Shopdog. Shopdog comes to mind as somebody who struggles a little bit there, so we'll see how it goes. Khaz'Trith is up. We saw this sort of story a few times here with Arbuz relying on the Khaz'Trith to provide a lot more value to the circuits, and he's already got Lyrilisks out as well. This is going to be very difficult for Newt to break in with just pure Cyprian, but he can try to camp out here and maybe see if he can trade favorably, forcing Arbuz to kind of walk into the line. Now you're going to see a little bit of split, though. I like the little step back with the Cyprians. The Huracan is going to go down, but there's a lot less Zerg than there was at one point. He just needs to be able to actually line him up for splash damage, and it doesn't look like that's a possibility. So they will get cleaned up immediately. Huracans are coming in after the fact, and the Cyprians are actually tucking tail. So it looks like he wants to maybe see if he can set up a little trap here. And it's not quite going to work out. I mean, it's a trap, but trap for who? He does end up clearing a couple Lyrilisks there at the very least, so that's somewhat cost-efficient. Plenty more Zethicors where that came from, and we do have those Nathicors turning into Calcs as I sort of gave lip service to. We did see that in the previous game as well, but it was a lower number. Now it's going to be 7, maybe 8. There's an 8th one lurking around somewhere. In that, we did clock visually that the third base is going up for Newt, but it's going to be some time before it's saturated. The last Huracan is dealt with on the other side of the map. We got some Vorvicors coming out as well for a little bit of extra oomph. I actually don't know where that Nathicor went. Oh, there it is. Maybe Arbuz will think about converting it as well. Or maybe he'll just keep it in there just as a little leader, a spiritual leader of the pool units. Now, he does end up spending down a lot of his minerals on Zeths and Lyrilisks, so he's going to get his third base canceled there as a result. Delayed a little bit before it can go down. We aren't reserving the resources. There's different ideas on that one. I guess reserving the resources is a bit more of a noob helper, but it also does... Like, then you wouldn't be able to use your money, and you wouldn't be getting anything for it immediately. So there's an argument either way. I know some Brood Warrior diehards, Cranking Out comes to mind as a player who's not the most active right now, but certainly a homie, has said before that he actually thinks it would be bad to have that be a requirement. Now here we go. Calculisks are going to be bad news for Newt's third base. You can see him pulling his ground army away, but he also has to respect where the ground army of his opponent is. Cyprians are scrambling out of the stockades. Are they on the right rally? No, they're actually rallied all the way down, so that was not corrected in time. And, the Cyprians are going to be enough to sort of shoo that away, but look, the ground army for Newt, that Bio Squad already moving all the way back up the ramp, has to come back down to try to attack and engage with the ground army of Arbuz. He's descending upon him, tearing a lot of them apart, but I think the second hit here is going to be way more powerful. Arbuz should not be trying to fight this with his Lyrilisks and his Calculisks. Those Apex strains are going to die if they stick around a little bit too soon. And yeah, he lost a lot more Lyras than I think he intended to. He's even going to lose some Calcs on the way out. Ooh, that was dangerous. It's a good thing that he pulled them away when he did. Only lost 2 or 3. Could have been way more, pretty much the whole flock. Now that was effective in terms of a multi-prong attack there. Newt does sometimes struggle dealing with those multitaskings. If you're hitting him on multiple fronts. There are a certain number of players that, they're not from Starcraft 2. Newt is actually a Brood War player once upon a time, or maybe more recent than I initially give him credit for. But he's somebody who I think it exhibits behavior somewhat similar to what we saw like Shopkeeper Dog do on Crisis Vector versus Nabelheim in the Battlement stage of Acropolis 3. But the other thing that's worth pointing out is that there was, once upon a time, StarCraft 2 players come in and they do the F2 move, right, where they just have their whole army. Now, there's no way to just automatically select your whole army like in StarCraft 2 in Cosmonarchy, but that same idea of just, controlling everything in one control group and then moving across the map, that does happen to a lot of players, and they will sometimes respond with, to air harassment with their ground attacking only units. Now, this time he's just going to go ahead and evacuate, automatically sending his Masons back home. Hurakan's engaging to try to reduce some of the damage towards the workers, and he should actually be able to do pretty good damage here. Oh, the Cyprians are actually on the front. That's not what they intended it to be. They're getting a little bit too big for their britches. There is another ground attack, just about ready to mass up. It's pure Zeth, but they could charge into the undefended natural while the ground army is away from location. Both players going for tier 2 at almost the same time. Iris started for Arbuz, and then 30 seconds earlier or so, it was the Atlas for our Terran player. Newt, once again, trying to engage with the Zerg army. He is pushing it back. He is trading back and forth. And these Apex strains for the swarming node, they are starting to thin. You can see that there's been a lot more of an incentive towards Arbuz's army to be more on the, less on the swarming side, more on the economic side, right? And he's attacking with these smaller parties, trying to pick apart units on the kiting back and forth. A couple more calculus could have been in the little thick of it, but not actually going to be a possibility. The Zetricor's coming on in, but there are some Mavericks. Oh, that Mason is actually pretty impactful here. Now you're going to see him go for a surround. He should be able to overwhelm this position, but at the same time, Newt is threatening the third base, so we are going to be back and forth for a little bit here. Zorius are on the way. You can see Arbuz trying to cycle his army at the natural, waiting for an opportunity to maybe come on down. The Cyprians are going to get a lot of value, though. Oh, every single calculus going down there is big news. But now it looks like the Lyrilisks will overwhelm them. We even have a Zorius out here for that matter, and that was a big army crush. Now Newt does not have nearly as many. Now you're really seeing the swarming nature of the Zerg on full display. A couple workers will go down. It's a smart move from Sir Newt to try to make that happen there at the end. He already had committed his Cyprians, and they're very slow-moving units, as you can see. Captaincy starting to be added as the Atlas is complete, but remember that Iris is also done, and we are going to see the Alcag Eteth. Okay. I wonder what he's going to be using that for. Kagralisks versus Bio could be a really good choice. You got to remember it does create those plague fields, and they are indiscriminate with what they target. It works best with swarming units, I find, like, Zeths and stuff, where you don't really care too much if they end up taking a lot of damage. Macro hatches galore around the third base, fourth base starting. You can see that there was a Mason sent down here at 6 o'clock, but the Zeth blocked it. So there is no fourth base on location for Newt. Instead, he's building it over here by his third, and he's probably going to lift it off towards 9 o'clock. Lyrilisks are going to come down and probably, halt the construction of it, but actually they don't commit. Arbuz being a little bit more tepid. Just building up, feeling like he's in a position of power with tier 2 leveraged. I think when Zerg has tier 2 and isn't actively dying, they probably do feel pretty powerful. But Newt is pretty good at the sort of mid-stage macro here. Arming himself with the captaincies. He's going up to 6 of them. We are going to see Apostles be fielded. Evigralisks are on the way. I wonder what Arbuz is thinking with those. There's been some conversation about how, like, the Criminalisk, the apex strain of the Evig, doesn't actually provide you with that much value. And then, some people, like I think it was Grass Eater mentioned, that, well, actually, if you can get them into the enemy worker line, 3 or 4 of them, and you just can't kill them in time if they're in a harassment squad. But, that could be a distant possibility here with the Evigs coming out. Almacs are also in the way, but it's only a few of them. Those are like a ranged Hydralisk. You can kind of think of them as a little bit more like a straightforward combat unit. Pretty good at because they're flying. Well, I said ranged Hydralisk. I meant flying Hydralisk, by the way. Obviously, Hydras are themselves being ranged. Because they're flying, they are pretty nimble. They're pretty easily controllable. They have a hit scan attack. So now we got the fourth base. It is actually going to be taken at this 6 o'clock, and we have some Sentinels being put up. Newt still doesn't have a consistent amount of anti-air. He's got the 1 or 2 watchdogs here at the natural, 1 in the third base. Maybe there was an extra one that got destroyed at some point. He's got 1 behind his mirror line in the main. So it does feel like, an air raid with these Almacs or something like that, and more of them are on the way. Could definitely help out quite a bit. So tier 2 is going to be shown in just a moment here. Some Zeths are going to be pinched off to attack that Hurakan, harassing the base at the 12 o'clock. It's not likely to kill it. And the single Sentinel down here should be uprooted relatively quickly. Can't withstand all that very quickly. All right. A couple more Almacs coming in. We saw those in the production tab. More and more of them being made. Arb is really investing into those. I guess the evigs are supposed to be sort of the multi-target move, right? Where while they're in motion, they will target 4 targets, for up to 4 enemies, and do some good damage there. But also they're pretty tanky units. And I guess another thing that's kind of underrated about them probably is the fact that the Apostles will be reclaiming over time. And so when you think about the Apostles as they pertain to this army, if you're able to multi-target with the evigs, that you can kind of overwhelm those reanimating units. A couple Zethar cores, for example, being taken out as they're reanimating would be a good move. Still just kind of crawling around the map is our Zerg player as he's taken that 5th base at 12 o'clock. A lot of Sentinels, a lot of Watchdogs. We're going to see a lot more stuff in that respect. And look at this. The Chokel Chazal is on the way. We are going to see extra Almax, extra effort here from our Zerg player. And the Matravel Nest on the way as well. Pretty much all the units there are pretty good for that sort of purpose. Top left going to be taken very soon, it looks like. Newt wants to take bottom right as well. Our players have got us into a little bit of a stalemate now. Defensive posture obtained. Expansion, the sole reclaimed Zeth that's still alive is going to be there. Some Strigas in the front line going down very quickly. Not exactly prime target here. An Apostle is reclaimed, but soon killed again. The Evigs are actually not moving, so they aren't going to be benefiting from their extra shots. The Striga's armor ending, allowing the Cyprians to kill a lot of Almax that were clumped up there. I don't think Arbuz was very respectful of that, and so he is going to have to retaliate here in a moment. But most of the Terran kills there were final. They aren't able to reanimate too many of their forces. You got, like, what? A couple Cyprians and a Siren. That seems to be all that they were able to reanimate. A single Evig. Not the biggest deal. We've got a lot of Zethar cores coming in as well. I have a feeling that must be just to add more fodder for the Apostles to basically be reanimating trash units, so to speak, instead of something more valuable. Because all they care about is the closest corpse, and so if you have like some garbage melee units to throw at them, some fodder, maybe a more generous term, albeit not that much more generous. And it does feel like, oh, he's pulling the egg, which is hilarious. But I wonder if Arbuz has seen that before. But bisecting the army with the reinforcements coming in now is going to be a big move. The problem is that he can't really overwhelm and crush this position without the assistance of the army down south. So that's taking a little bit longer than he would like. Both players have a huge amount of resources, but it looks like 12 o'clock is indeed going to be destroyed. Maybe a couple of workers will be donated over in the process. And, well, you can see Arbuz sizing up a bit of a death push into the third base of Newt, but instead wants to come around and complete the move onto his opponent's army. And these Apostles, in theory, are in, defensive posture, but when you're getting flanked from the south, that becomes your front line. And there's only one Apostle in a safe territory. Unlikely to be most useful. But it looks like the Cyprians are holding the line relatively well. It feels like Arbuz needed to sync up his army, but he is also still waiting for his extra units to come out. Got Convolisks on the way and Lyrilisks on the way. And Convies are really good at polluting the corpse pool, making it so that it's quite difficult for the Apostles to get much done. They're just going to be reanimating a bunch of Rillarocors, essentially. The add-on is up for just the Tinker's Tower. No Guild Hall. Zorius on the way. We got them in droves. No upgrade on the Shroud, though, so can't be going for Ultras. I feel like that would be a good unit, but maybe you also don't want to provide it to your opponent when they've got the Apostles out. I understand abstaining from that to some degree, but I think at this point he's just going to be sizing up his Zerg army to make the maximum number of brood spawn that you can. Bunch of Zethar cores delaying this attack for a little bit. They're probably not even going to kill a Striga yet. Doesn't look like it. And this base at 3 o'clock, it's pretty important, although it's undersaturated right now. Newt actually has way more resources, way more minerals equipped with his composition. It's worth pointing that out. However, this is not a great engagement for the Terran, it feels like, coming in from one angle, but look at everything that's over here still attacking that base at the 3 o'clock on the low ground. The extra weapon range kind of fighting them in the ass because they're busy attacking that instead of attacking the army. They're taking over. And there's just not enough reanimation here to slow Arbuz's ascent towards what feels like could be a very momentum-swinging fight. He is going to take over the entirety of this ground, defending this base. He didn't lose hardly anything on the base location itself, and now Newt has to think about what he's going to be doing next. Mason saturating the treasury in the, we'll call it the 4 o'clock in there in the bottom right, low ground. More Zorius, more Convies. They are missing damage dealing. That's what it feels like we're going to be lacking here for Arbuz. And there it is. He's reset the army enough times that the Ulgorg becomes a lot more attractive. You know, his opponent is still going to be occasionally ranging apostles in. A lot of them have been masked up. But the army is all the way in the bottom left. It's a great opportunity now for bottom right to be targeted at the same time. We see it. Tier 3 on the way for our Terran player. Leveraging it a lot faster than Arbuz. That's part of the advantage of having all those extra workers. I don't think that they actually are that distant in terms of base count, but losing that 12 o'clock, a lot of pressure being put towards the 3 o'clock, it definitely adds up. That and having 60 more workers than your opponent is always nice. It seems like Arbuz is caught between a rock and a hard place. There's so many sentinels being assembled here for Newt that as he assembles that, it's going to be really difficult for Arbuz to break that conventionally. No Vilgoricors. That's a bit of a missed opportunity, it feels like, to make something happen. Now, this attack shouldn't really go anywhere for Newt. I feel like he's overextending. You got to remember, you're in a huge tech transition point right now, where you have a lot of resources invested in defense and your tier 3, and your army is much smaller by comparison. Deploying the shamans, see how much he can get as far as value goes. These sentinels just cracking off shot after shot. Nothing to really contest the air, but the convolisks, I don't think they're going to be able to overwhelm. Remember, there's not much damage to overwhelm the entrenched position and all the shamans. Most of the ground army did get wiped, but you could say the same about the position that Arbuz finds himself in. He's got more Almacs for damage dealing, that's for sure. And we don't actually see any more Cyprians being added into the mix. It's mostly Mavericks at this point. So when you have the Strigas rending the armor, they are dealing some splash damage to the Almacs, but there's no Cyprians to really just puff them into a cloud of smoke. No autocrats for a little bit of splash damage, and of course the reanimation procs. And, oh yeah, he's mostly just making shamans and Mavericks out of those stockades. Putting a treasury down at 9 o'clock, he wants to take that and just transfer workers from depleted bases. At this stage of the game makes a lot of sense, as the main natural and third are all depleted for both of our players. No other tech development just yet. Oh, I say that. The nest is upgrading. We are going to see the Anter come out, and Tier 3 is complete now for Newt. Apothecaries immediately be thrown down here. Where is he actually building those? Okay, all the way in this corner. 5 of them coming up. His reclaimed Zetracor spotted out the expansion at the 10 o'clock base. Low ground. We're definitely, like this, you could argue that this is podcast territory. Oh, that's a misplaced treasury. But this to me feels a lot more exciting, a lot more tense, because we're getting into that territory where it's a little bit uncharted, right? We don't really know how the Algoztalisks, for example, favor versus some of the apothecary units. I'm expecting, you know, more silver tongues than anything, but 7 steps for that splash damage could be really big. Their railgun does travel back and forth. A little bit of a ping pong move. Feels like it could be really powerful. It's a little bit uncharted territory, but a great tool versus Zerg, in my opinion. And we do have 1 nanite assembly coming up. That's going to be all the way over here inside the main base on the high ground, so we will see some endgame air. More Strigas, and yes, indeed, Silver Tongues, the gas dump. As he's trying to take this base with the extra Vespine ridges, it is going to cause some problems when Arbuz rocks up to it and threatens to exfoliate it. At the same time, though, there's so many Strigas here, it does prove a little bit challenging to get to a proper composition, a proper attack. He made the Ulgorg, but we do have only a few Ultra Cores here. Of course, no Gorgs. Tekera Cores on the way. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Start making those. I think he's probably morphing those on location. No, he must be morphing them back at his rally then. Or maybe he's got some Oxal larvae somewhere. Either way, though, we are going to see a lot of Zerg mining here in a moment. Still very much down workers, but same base count, right? As soon as this gets saturated. So it does feel like Newt overall is going to have a similar economy. He's just going to maybe have more efficient economy. Nobody's taken the island bases yet. That's the only base on the map that has yet to be taken. What a beautiful mini-map to see here. A banger that goes to tier 3 if for one player and not the other, although he's very close to being able to afford it. Ekistracors are on the way. We also have the Tekera coming, so these units deal AoE melee damage, and every unit spawns Rillisks, like flying broodlings. Think of them as. A little bit of a range on them. Spots out the army coming in with just a few Zoryus. Now, that does seem expensive to lose, but at this stage of the game, it's more than possible. He actually cancels out the Ultra Cores he was making on the front line. And now he's going to see if he can make an engagement happen. The Techeirocors are going to swing on in a little bit later. Zoryus will accelerate their speed, and they're going to try to get on top of things. They're being pulled every way, each way. There's so many Shamans trying to keep the healing going, but it does feel like the front line is collapsing a little bit here. The Algods are putting out an ungodly amount of DPS over time. They're not really focused on the same target. Very important win for Arbuz in the south, but it does feel like maybe this midsection is still cracking off shot after shot. Some Ultra Cores are done. The Convolisks are still in some amount of value, but the Techeirocors got turned, and just like that, it does feel like, well, with some Algoz being converted, it might be a little bit more than what Arbuz wanted to see on the reanimation front. He's got his own infestation specialist, and indeed he does have the Oxal larva in the main base. That's how he was making those bad boys. He's going to end up losing the 10 o'clock low ground, and most likely also the high ground. Is he going to try to contest that or go for a counter? I think with this kind of composition, you probably want to tend towards countering. Almost double the worker count here for Newt, so he's definitely getting more value out of his bases, and shutting down 1 is a really big. Shutting down 2, he can basically call this a win. Really, the only question is, will Arbuz have any tech in display? Will he be able to accelerate and prolong this game? Accelerate his opponent's decision-making snafus by attacking into some of these very fortified positions. The third base open for business. That's where the rally is, but you can easily overwhelm that. He's just sizing up a potential attack. I don't think this is going to work out. Let's see if he can prove me wrong. Not that much splash damage, remember. The Techeirocors really only have to worry about the Strigas, and most of them are busy with the front line or all the way back up here. However, they are starting to falter, and the Silver Tongues are in the back just doing single target damage in good number. Meanwhile, they're ranging down the Convolisks from very far distance. They are sniper units, and Arbuz has to call GG. That's a 2-0 for Newt. Very powerful stuff here. We get to see some of the most impactful and significant units that the Terrans have to offer. Very cool game. Guys, if you like what you saw, remember, you can subscribe to the channel. You can do all that algorithm upvote stuff, but you can also donate via the Streamlabs link in the description or the Coffee link in the description, depending on if you want better project development, that's Coffee, or you just want more show matches, that's the Streamlabs link. I'll see you guys when the next video. GG.